All right, we're going to let the attendees start to funnel in. Should be a very exciting seminar here with our communication training director, Miss Lara Traube. All right, we'll just let those attendees funnel in. We're up to 10, we're getting up to 15. Anyway, we'll let it keep adding up. We'll let everybody start to slowly make their way into the Zoom webinar. Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this week. We've been trying to make this series interesting and useful and special, and we think this week is especially special here with Miss Traube. Okay, because everybody, I guess it's a slow funnel, but it keeps adding every second. So don't want anybody to miss any of the important bits. Okay, I think we can hop into it now. Let me just begin sharing here. Sure. Yeah, so we'd just like to thank everybody once again joining us for our weekly BEC webinar. Here with Miss Lara Traube, our communication training director, speaking about a very important topic of grace and gratitude. You know, we're usually so focused on our academics, or we're usually so focused on our extracurriculars, which can yield, you know, awards and accolades, but perhaps in the day-to-day, we can often take for granted or miss a lot of the important aspects of what we're doing, which can touch on grace and gratitude. So we think this is a really important topic, and we're very excited to have Lara here today. And before I hand the floor over to her, I just, you know, we always get people from all over joining our seminars, and we just wanted to show a little bit about BEC, what we do as an education company. We are focused on the education of youths. We have students ranging from middle school, high school, into college, and the idea is we want to help them develop their long-term education plans. Long-term planning meaning, what is the purpose of your schooling? If you're going to work hard in something, if you're going to be spending a lot of time to do well in it, what are you trying to do for your future? And that means much more than getting into college. That means a future goal for your life, for your career, for your own personal fulfillment. And if we can help students to understand better what they want to achieve in their life after college, then suddenly the planning for college can become a lot clearer, a lot stronger. And that's why we have to have a team of experts all in their respective fields to really support students along the way. So beyond just academic advising, we have, you know, people like Ms. Traube to help students improve their soft skills, improve their communication skills, as all of these planning and all these trainings can help students to better execute their plans over time, and hopefully get one step closer to their future goals that they want to achieve anyway. So in this way, we're able to achieve the near-term goal, get into a good college, by actually focusing more on the long-term goal, which is what are you supposed to be, what do you want to do after college. So that's just a little bit about us, but I will turn the floor over back to Ms. Traube. Okay.
Awesome.
All right, thank you. All right, wow, the participants have really jumped up. Okay, I'll let you take over from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonathan. I really appreciate that. So everybody, thank you for joining tonight. I'm hoping that this will be really a fun evening for us, and a topic that makes sense for everybody now. And I'll just jump right into it. And at the end, if there's time, we'll do some questions. So, you know, really want to talk tonight about the importance of grace and gratitude. And today, you know, more than at any other time in American history in the last 100 years at least, you know, we're experiencing a time with shelter in place, with COVID, with all those concerns, where you could feel a total loss of control. You know, many of us are now limited to the inside of our homes. We're limited in our travel and our activity. And that, you know, leaves me a little concerned about health and well-being, and all of the concerns we have for our friends and family and their health and well-being. But I'm not here tonight to really talk about the pandemic. I just think it would be remiss not to mention it given the topic, and given the way that grace and gratitude can really impact your perception on what's happening around you, and impact your ability to make decisions from a space of calm. And so that's why I bring that part up. I think here, The value of grace and gratitude and the impact it can make on your daily life is really all within your control. And as I leave the time at the end for questions, think as I'm talking about what things does this bring up for you and what questions do you have around it? So I want to start by building really a better understanding of what grace and gratitude are when I say them. And sometimes starting with what they're not is a clearer way to explain such a concept. So, grace, it's not the opposite of clumsy. I'm not talking away as someone moves, as in to be graceful. When I'm talking about grace, I'm truly talking about what it means to honor yourself and honor others around you. And it's just really a deep level of both that sense of honor and respect. And giving yourself grace, it does not mean, beating yourself up in a situation you're in and it didn't end up the way that you envisioned. And for example, you could say you were trying to learn a new skill, and you're struggling with that. It's totally normal. Giving yourself grace would be like saying, it's okay that I'm struggling. I'm learning something new here. Maybe taking a pause and then returning to it later when you're a little bit calm. It's really, really different than telling yourself, I'm never going to get this. I'm not good enough. I'll just give up. And, we all have those moments. They don't go away as you get older. Every time you're learning something new, or perhaps something that's a little bit more complex, or you're involved in a situation that is new to you, it's likely that those thoughts could come up. And by saying to yourself, this is new to me, I can take a deep breath, I can take some space and try again, you're allowing yourself the opportunity to actually succeed. I hope that makes sense. As I talk through gratitude, I'm not talking about the conditioned response of just saying thank you without thinking about it. If someone opens a door for you or brings you dinner, or does something kind, it could be that, but it's not always that. And it's not necessarily the response when you're truly gifted with something you've been longing for. It's, or you get something that's way more than what you hoped for. In my house, it's Pokemon right now. And so we get the card deck, and when there's a really special one, man, my son is excited. But that's a great amount of thankfulness. And yes, it's showing gratitude in a way, but that's not really what I'm talking about here either. It could be, but it's really the feeling that you want to sink into. What is that feeling of gratitude and of your response? And how deep is that? It's more of a sense of being as opposed to the words we say to use it. Very, very easy to say, hey, thanks, Mom, or hey, thanks, Dad, or, I do it at work. We all do it at work all the time with somebody who's brought something to you, and you just, oh, thank you. And it's almost dismissive if you don't stop and really think about, hey, thanks. That just made the difference in my day, right? Those two things can sound very different. So looking at this, the question then is, why are these two ideas so important? Some of this is really obvious. It's nice to be nice to people. It's nice not to be a sore loser, or it's great to be graceful. It's great to be humble. These are all ideas that are taught to us as we're growing up, and sometimes along the way. And there's many ways that these might show up daily, and I'm sure you can think of a lot of those too. But I want to take it just a step further, and starting with grace. And for some of you, this might be a reminder. It could be just a little aha moment. I'm going to tell you a story that it's very simple. So as I outlined above, giving yourself grace leaves you open, right? For mistakes to happen without them being failures, to discover something new about yourself or others around you, and simply not to beat yourself up, right? And our inner dialogue really matters. It impacts our health and our well-being. It shapes our feelings, and those feelings then shape our actions, and our actions shape how we communicate. So as you're giving grace to yourself and the people around you, it just allows for more space, and it allows for people to step out of their natural defenses when things go awry or you're not seeing eye to eye, and when you're not on the same page. And that space then opens the door to be able to communicate really openly and deeply. And the more you practice it, the more comfort you gain in being able to express yourself calmly and collectively in an unfamiliar circumstance. And this is really the biggest key to that, is it's not always just in your expression. It's that when you open up that expression in that way, it opens up the possibility for others to actually hear you, right? So if you're closed and we're not feeling graceful towards ourselves, we get really frustrated and say, I can't figure out that sonnet and how I'm going to finish it for my English class. I've got a really complex problem and I haven't been able to figure out how to get through that. And we allow that frustration to boil in. And our internal dialogue sounds something like, I'm never going to get it. I should just give up. I should ask somebody else. There are smarter people than me who can do it. It's never going to come to light, right? You hear that and that frustration boils. So when you do reach out for help, that frustration is the first thing that other people hear. And sometimes that frustration closes the door to somebody being able to help you. On the flip side of that, if you can open that door knowing, I know I could get this, I just can't see how right now, and asking gently, hey, can you hear me out? I think I'm missing the key here, or I'm missing something about what I need to get done, and I'm having a hard time getting there. That's a much more open-ended conversation for somebody to be able to respond and say, yeah, I have 5 minutes, let's talk through it, or something on that level. So, it's nice to talk in generalities like that, but I want to give you a real life example. And I will preface this by saying I have permission to share this. But earlier this week, I was working with a client, and she's in her 30s, and she shares her home with her mother. Her mother's in her 70s, very able, very spirited. She has a giant heart, her mother, and her mother leads from her heart. And sometimes that means she doesn't always make the safest choices. So this is what happened. 4 a.m. in the morning, there was someone knocking at their door. It was dark. They can't see very far past their doorway, so it's hard to see anything. But I woke the dog up, and the dog was barking. So the mother goes to the door and opens it. Probably not the safest choice, but she sees a lady who's fairly well dressed and doesn't have a coat on the other side, and the lady looked really out of sorts. And she said, please help me get home. I've lost my bearings and I've been wandering around for hours and I can't find my way home. And so the mother decides that this woman needs her help. It's a great place to start from, right? She goes back in her house. She has the lady's address. She looks it up, realizes it's just a couple blocks away. She thinks, I should probably be a little bit safe about this, and gets her dog ready to go with her. She's got a fairly large dog, and grabs a flashlight. And in the midst of this, my client was woken up and kind of aware of what was going on, but didn't realize her mom had decided to walk this lady home. So the mom opens the door, and the stranger's no longer there. And the mom becomes concerned that she continued to wander, thinking she took too much time to get ready. So she decides to follow her. Maybe at midday, that might be a okay thing to do, but at 4 a.m. when it's still dark, not necessarily the safest thing to do. So I'll cut to the end here and just let you know that the lady indeed still lived 2 blocks away. Could have been someplace that she lived many years ago, given her state of confusion. One of her other neighbors, because she had knocked on many doors before she knocked on my clients, had called the police, and the police were able to kind of intervene and get her home. In the meantime, my client had gotten nervous, so she had gotten in the car and tried to follow her mother. Long story, but I promise you there's a good point here. So, at the end, the mother and the daughter, my client, got home, and they got into an argument about, was this the safest thing to do? What other actions could you have taken? They were both frustrated. They both had their own points. The mother felt like it was her responsibility to help this woman get to where she needed to go. The daughter felt like maybe that wasn't the safest choice, and she was very frustrated that that would be the only option her mother could see. And as I was listening to her, I could hear that frustration coming back up. And I could also hear these notes of concern. And so I asked, "What were you thinking as you went out after your mother in the dark?" And her response was very simple. It was one of both fear and love. Her thought, the only thing she was thinking was, I can't lose her like this. She was truly concerned for her mother's safety. I asked her if in her argument with her mother she shared those words. And she said, "You know what? I didn't even realize it until now. I was so hung up on all the risks that I forgot to tell her I was worried because I loved her." And I asked her, "What would happen if you went back to your mother now and had that discussion with her?" And she said, "You know what? I think she might hear me. I think she might understand why I'm so concerned." And so, in this place, using grace to listen to her internal dialogue really then helped her calm down, helped her realize what it was she was really upset about, really scared about, and then be able to figure out, wow, this might change the conversation. Because as you can imagine, things like that don't go away in a day. So, just one example. So, I'm going to move back to gratitude now. So, coming from gratitude can also open many doors for us all. It leaves us really available to see situations in a different light, to rise above frustrations again without dismissing them, to really appreciate what we have at a much deeper level. It gives us an opening for resilience and to thrive. It's noticeable value and energy to other people, and it leaves room for us to be happy right where we are. Right? And I think that that's a big challenge. Often we think, I'll be happy when I get. The opposite is, I can be happy right where I am. And then as I grow, guess what? It's limitless. And I know that's sometimes a really challenging thought, as is the idea of remembering that life is really about the journey, not necessarily the destination. The destinations can be important, right? But it's all about what we accumulate along the way. And as we're learning those pieces and growing through those to reach our milestones, maybe to get our college diploma, to get that job after that I've been wanting forever, to get promoted once I've been there for a while. Those are really important milestones. And the way to get there could be really bumpy. And yet, if we can maintain a sense of gratitude as we're walking along that journey, there's more opportunity for us to see what other directions might I go. So I'll tell you that those unexpected doors can just open without you thinking about them. And I'm going to share another story, it's a little quicker, from my professional life. So in my professional corporate role, I'm often in the situation where I'm conducting interviews. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to do 4 interviews in a day, which is sometimes very common for me. And this candidate came in, and he stuck out right away. He was our last candidate of the day. He was a lot younger than our other candidates. He was early. He was dressed very well, wearing a full suit when we're in a business casual environment and jeans are acceptable. He had a great smile. He had a great handshake. He came in with a really great attitude and really answered our questions well. But unfortunately, he didn't have quite as much experience as what we needed. The position we were hiring for was a senior role, and he had very, very little experience for that. But the second he left, all of the other panelists who were interviewing with me and myself sat down and said, wow, this role is not the right one for him, but what role do we have? Or when can we find one where we can call that gentleman back? And from there, I went back to my desk later and I'd received a really nice thank you letter. And it wasn't a typical thank you letter. It was very detailed. And he left a door open in there for me to contact him with any more questions, should I have any, which is usually the door I leave open for people to call me. So a few days later, our recruiter had gotten back to him and let him know, we only had 2 positions. We had 4 great candidates, and unfortunately, he was not going to be moving forward for that role. And he sent me a second thank you letter. It's very unusual. A lot of people maybe would have been frustrated that they didn't get the job. Maybe just would have understood and figured I'll try next time. Maybe wouldn't have thought about it. But the second email he sent me, it wasn't patronizing, it wasn't rude. It was just really detailed in the appreciation he had for the time that we spent together and his realization that he may just not have quite enough experience for that very senior role. He asked, though, what other entry-level positions might you have? How else can I stay in contact with you so that I can grow? And guess what? We had a great conversation. I picked up the phone and called him. And that opening of what else could I do? How else could I get there? Left it available for me to feel comfortable to pick up the phone and say, let me tell you exactly how we felt about meeting you and how great it was, right? It doesn't always happen, but his gratitude and the way he expressed it truly made the difference in this situation. I've left it open for him to reach out to me from time to time. We've also left the opening there to let him know what's available. And I'm hopeful that someday the paths will meet at the right time and we'll be able to bring him into the organization. So for me personally, having a gratitude practice has helped me to fine-tune those things that have importance in my life. It gives a weight to the things that matter the most. And not like in a cheesy commercial, but in a really visceral way. Almost like a meditation practice, right? Meditation practices really quiet the mind, bring you serenity. Gratitude practice is very similar to that. So it really helps me to show up for work or with a client with a clear head and then come home being ready either to be available as a wife and a mother or to be clear about asking my spouse for some time and space so I can let go of whatever was going on in my day. The key there is I'm consciously able to make that choice. Now, we talk about this with our 6-year-old. He does training at school to bring awareness to these things, right? So if you walk in and you're really frustrated, you've got a lot of feelings in a balloon that you're carrying around with you. It's a good example. And sometimes if you're not consciously figuring out a way to release the tension in the balloon can leak out all over the place and all around you. And everybody feels all of your frustration and worry and concern, and nobody's able to really figure out where it's coming from, right? But if you find a way to constructively address those things, you're much more able to communicate, what do you really need in this moment? And be able to ask for that and to be able to be heard. Right? And I know this is a constant theme. It is the theme of the talk, right? How do I be heard? And so I think gratitude there is really that key for me to find the spot where I can find those things that I'm thankful for and really sit in them and let them marinate in a way so that I can come out and be very verbal about that. I find that the more that I practice this, the easier it becomes and the more abundant I see it in my life. So this really leads us to how. How do you build the skill set for grace and gratitude? So I'll say, as with anything in life, there is no one right way to do this type of work. You're going to need to start with what works to you, but the idea is to build a practice to help you recognize that feeling of being grateful. If you go online, there are a lot of resources telling you and giving you different ideas of how to do this. Pinterest even has a ton of them. I know Pinterest isn't used by a lot of people anymore, but it certainly has them. In my family, my children are really young. So what we decided works for us to build this as a practice is every night at dinner, we sit down and we do a round of what we call gratefuls. And each of us is responsible to come up with 3 things during the day that we feel grateful for experiencing. And it could be, Dad made the best dinner tonight. It could be, I got to jump on the trampoline, or I made a great art project or read a great book. Or sometimes it's something really deep. Like my son came home and was explaining how much he appreciated his teacher showing them how to do something. And he was very specific about the task and what he learned. It was pretty amazing to see. But that gratitude practice, it doesn't work for every family and it doesn't work for every individual. And some of us are more private, and that's fine too. A lot of people will recommend a gratitude journal where you write down the things you're grateful for 3 to 7 days a week. Um, a lot of people recommend doing it in the evening so you can really kind of think back on your day and figure out what was the most important to you. And I'd say if you opt to do something like that, every few weeks, go back and look and see if you can recognize patterns, see if you can recognize things that change, and if something in those lists draws you to them, to create more of that in your life. Another fun thing people do is they write down something they're grateful for and they throw it in a jar. And then 6 months down the road, they pick it up and take a look at what they'd written and they went, oh yeah, I remember that day. The idea is to practice it. And as you practice it and you do it more routinely, there are actually studies out there, and I'm not going to cite them tonight, but that show those impact your health and well-being. They improve your attitude. They can actually affect your health in very positive ways and reduce feelings of anxiety, right? Um, there are lots of studies out there on this, and it's an interesting one to look at. There are a lot of positive psychology articles around it as well. And I've marinated and read a lot of those over the years, and I have some resources if you're interested, I can share them with you. Now, if none of those things sound like they're anything you're interested in, just writing an old-fashioned thank you note, even on email, is something that can do that. And if that's still not comfortable, they've shown that even just mentally having the conversation in your head of what you're grateful for, or thankful for, is enough to trigger those responses in your body to help you kind of calm down and start to really realize, what is it that I'm grateful for and how can that inform my next decision? And that's really what it's about. So I'm going to end there. I think we have a little bit of time left, but before I do, I really would like to thank BEEC for opening the door for this and Jonathan for hosting and allowing me to speak, and thank you all for taking the time to attend. I'd also like to know if you have any questions.
Sure. No, yeah, Lara, that was fantastic. We were absolutely going to open up to questions, and I think there are some key points. I'm sure everybody's been listening closely, but I love the message about gratitude and grace. They're practicable. This idea that they are not just an automatic response. In fact, they're the almost antithesis to an automatic response.
Yeah.
They are things that you can really improve over time, which you have to be very, very mindful of. And I think another great point, because you brought it back into a workplace scenario, is sometimes these soft skills are, people think, oh, well, I want to focus on the real thing. And the soft skill is just maybe the trick, right? And the idea is soft skills are real, that they make impressions on people. This is the fundamental communication. And then second, it's not about tricks. Because if you have real gratitude, that is not just, oh, say thanks, oh, learn how to, handle perfunctory gestures, right? The idea is that it's got to come from a learned and really a heartfelt place. And when that happens, wow, the impact is huge. So I think those stories were so good, and something that all of our students, it's important for them to practice. It's important for any adult, for us within our company to do as well. So I think those were great messages. Oh, but yeah, in our audience, do we have any questions or comments? We'd love to take some. Oh, I think we have one coming in. Oh, well, we have a great topic and amazing speaker. Okay, well, we'll take some gratitude then.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I think that's the first practice of gratitude. If there are any other questions, though, for sure, we would like to take them. And no matter what, everybody listening today, and we're going to shoot it in our WeChat group too, but is eligible for a 30-minute free consultation with Traube. So for sure, we can always take this conversation offline. Maybe you have a personal issue you want to talk about. Maybe it's not something you want to discuss in a group. We totally understand. But if there were any questions that you wanted to turn to the group, please take advantage of the time. So maybe we'll give everybody another minute or two. But,
Absolutely.
Yeah, but really, I think very illuminating, and I think we all hopefully these days have the time to perhaps put a little more focus on these things when during normal times when maybe we're running around and all a little too crazy, but now we really.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be time intensive. It could be 3 to 5 minutes a day. I mean, I think we spend, I don't know, 5 minutes at dinner going through this every night.
Oh, I think we have one good question here.
Mhm.
How do you manage frustrating experiences that happen unexpectedly?
Well, that's totally normal. It happens all the time, right? I think the key to that is stopping the second you start to feel that frustration,
Yeah.
and finding a way that you can step away for a moment and take a breath and try to identify exactly what about it is frustrating. And sometimes that's really hard,
Yes.
but often I find frustrations coming from a place of lack of control or lack of understanding of the moment. And if you can step away for just a second, even if you don't even move, you just stop and take a deep breath. Sometimes and ask yourself that question: why exactly am I so frustrated right now? You don't have to have an open dialogue. You can do it in your head, and sometimes the answer will come to you, and that might help release some of that.
I think that's a great point, because frustration can really cloud our vision, because that's the end result, frustration. But
Right.
but take it back, step back. What is really kind of promoting that frustration? Understand. Great, that's good. That's a very good question and answer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and yeah, any others from our audience? And I think, sorry. Yes, another one. When things you feel grateful for are so small, yet the things that frustrate are so big, how do we balance them?
Oh, that's a great question too.
That's a very deep question.
Really great question. So I would say this: the small things, the more you can pay attention to what types of small things you have that you're grateful for, they start to multiply. And sometimes in that growth of gratitude, the things that are frustrating you, they're not as important anymore and they're not as highlighted. And in the moment, it doesn't always feel so great to do that. But I think if you can step away and again start to peel back those frustrating items and figure out, why is it that thing is so frustrating? And I can remember a time when I was a college student just saying, man, if I could just be content. I'm so frustrated right now. I can't even strive to be happy. I can just be content. But that was a starting point to really open this up, right? And so
Right.
finding that starting point to de-escalate the frustration and increase the gratitude, regardless of how small it is, can really start to help you.
Absolutely. And I think we have one more piece of gratitude coming in. My child commented that this talk has taught her a lot. Thank you.
Well, you're so very welcome.
That's great. That's really great.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And okay, all right, one more. Where they are coming in, people do have their questions. They're just, one by one. Can you give another example of how change of attitude, such as being grateful, can improve communication effectiveness?
Sure. Let me just think on it for a second here. I think I'll take another workplace example. So, oftentimes in a workplace, especially, myself being a leader,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I have to roll out processes and procedures that I may not necessarily agree with, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still my job to roll them out, right? The company's made a decision. And so I work with my feelings of frustration around that, hopefully before I have to take those to my team. Sometimes my team members will be really frustrated with that. And by me being able to calm myself and sit and really listen to what they're saying, and allow them to use me as a sounding board for that frustration, they're able to get the frustration out. And it's not necessarily me saying, hey, I agree with this decision 100%, but I can say, I'm, you know, I'm with you, I get you, um, but this is where we're going. This is the direction we have to go. So what can we do together to make this feel okay, right? And so in there, my gratitude is really around helping the other person come to terms with what we have to work through and being able to hear and listen to them instead of being frustrated with them, right? And so that opens a dialogue for us to continue growing together.
I love that. I feel like this, when people express frustration, oftentimes it just kind of rebounds back at them even harder. But
Right.
to absorb the frustration, almost go with the frustration, and that
Mm-hmm.
kind of extends it out so far that it's lowered the total level of emotion to the
Yeah,
point where maybe it's not even frustration anymore. It's just participatory
right.
communication.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that the frustrations aren't valid, right? We all have frustrations. It's part of being human.
Right.
And we don't want to take away that frustration and diminish it. But by being able to allow somebody the space to express it and being able to be in a space ourselves where we can hear that, we can find a way to work together.
Totally. And okay, we got another question. Man, the questions have been so good. Yeah. Okay. How long would it take for a young person to train and practice to be graceful? And what is the best age to start doing this?
Well, for the first part of that, I have zero answers, right? This is up to every individual person. Everybody learns at their own pace. It's all expressed at their own pace. So I'd say it never hurts to start. I will tell you that we started doing this with my 4-year-old when she was 3.
Mhm.
Um, and it is amazing to watch what she brings to the table, but not only that, to watch how she responds when we're out in public and
Mhm.
with other groups of people where she's not really sure mom's paying attention to her. And I see that a lot with the toddlers she's in daycare with. She's really gentle with them and really open with them. And I think that our gratitude practice has something to do with that.
I guess the answer is it's never too young, and
Never too young.
it never stops.
Right.
Yeah,
And you're
because
never
it.
too old to start either.
Good, very good points. All right. Oh, okay, another one. This is quite an interesting one. When kids are forced to do their homework, it's hard for them to be grateful. How can teachers or
Absolutely.
parents, what can they do to help this?
Well, I think I mean, that's a common thing. We deal with that in my house a lot. And I have a student who loves to learn, right? So
Mhm.
I think it's really in hearing out that frustration and trying to work together to find a way to tie the homework to the end goal.
Yeah.
So if your end goal is, I want to go to this college,
Right.
and in order to get there, I need to have X, Y, and Z taken care of. How do we tie the homework to that goal, and how do we help make that interesting for the student? And how do we also recognize their frustration? It's not always fun to do homework. Sometimes it feels pointless, right? That's just a normal response as we're looking at that. But if we can take it back to 6 months ago, what was your homework assignment, and
Mm.
how did you build on that to be where you're at today? And where do you think this is going to take you 6 months from now? And they're not always going to like it, but we all also have things in life we have to do.
Yeah.
So, it's finding the balance between those pieces.
I like that because it's true. You gotta kind of zoom out a little bit. What is the point of this? Okay, what are you really trying to work toward? And this is just that one little step that is part of the whole master plan, sort of, and that perspective is important.
Hmm.
We do have some more questions. We're kind of rolling it
Sure.
out. Everybody's rolling it out, but they're so good. But what about this one? Everything's anonymous, but when you are facing a rude or bullying person, how do you stay graceful and appreciative? What do you do in that kind of situation?
Well, you know what? I'll say that if you're feeling threatened, it's always okay to walk away from the conversation, right? We don't want to encourage anybody to be in a conversation where they're feeling bullied.
Right.
I feel that that's really important, is take care of your personal safety.
Yeah.
There may be times where you don't feel comfortable in expressing gratitude to that person, um, but you could be in a situation where you have someone who's really just pushing your buttons, and you can be grateful that you're aware that your buttons are being pushed.
Mm.
And sometimes in doing that, we can never control somebody else's response to us.
Yeah.
We can only control our response to them and to the situation. And so you may not be like, hey dude, thanks for being so rude, right? That's probably
Probably not. Probably
really
not.
not going to be the conversation. But what you could do is really just say, you know what, I need to step away for right now.
Yeah.
Right? Often that's an okay thing, and say, I need to continue this conversation later. Or point it to how you're feeling instead of how they're responding, right? There's some tricks and techniques for that. There's a lot of great coaching around that,
Yeah.
um, and a lot of great coursework for that. But sometimes it's just as simple as starting with yourself. And if the conversation really isn't going anywhere, it's okay to say, I need to take a break from this.
Yeah. Definitely need to assess the situation.
Hmm.
And I think we may have one more. Maybe the last one. I hesitate to say, but is there any kind of quick trick that cannot be forgotten, kind of when the moment comes, or anything you'd maybe want to share with all?
Hmm. The thing that I always go back to is if I'm feeling frustration or I'm not quite sure what to bring up, the first thing I do is take a breath and try to center myself in my surroundings,
Mm,
right? Sometimes if we can come back into our physical space
yeah,
and get kind of out of our head, right?
yeah.
We can get stuck in our head and forget kind of what's going on around us. If we can take that deep breath in that moment, and even you can say, I just let me pause for a second before I respond, right? You can
Mm,
acknowledge that there's going to be a gap there and kind of gather your thoughts before you respond. And sometimes just doing that is enough to allow you the space to respond appropriately.
mm-hmm. No, that is really, I think, very critical. And oh man, the questions keep coming in, and they're all so good. Okay, let me take this one. In return, how do we get others to appreciate us? In other words,
Great
keeping,
question.
yeah, really good question. Keeping other people grateful of what we do so that our collective behavior stays constructive. Wow. I know everybody's anonymous, but anyway, we'd really love to know who asked. It's such a good question.
It is such a great question. And, I don't have an easy answer for that because, as I mentioned just previously, right, the only thing we can control is how we respond to others.
Yeah.
I will say, though, if you're setting the example out there, people notice. And you may not get appreciation the day you think you deserve it, right? We all might say, hey, I just did this really great thing. I'm going to get so many accolades.
Yeah.
It may not show up right away. But if you continue being present and continue showing that sense of gratitude for even the little things around you, people start to notice. It's an energy that builds. It's a feeling that builds. It builds camaraderie with your peers in any situation. And at some point, it will be recognized. And I know that that's hard because we love instant gratification.
Yeah, you gotta believe. No,
Hmm.
but really putting that model behavior, first and foremost.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay. Well, I think thank you so much to Lara. Thank you so much to our audience for really engaging with. Oh, okay.
Oh, we've got
Oh,
a
we have
4-year-old
a
joining.
visitor. We have a visitor. Hi. Very.
She loves Zoom. All
She
right.
loves it. Well, we love her.
Hmm.
It's great. Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, okay, we'll add one more. Sometimes we
Yeah.
keep our feelings to ourselves when we are mad or unhappy, which
Yeah.
is reasonable. That is typical behavior. Is there an easy way to open up and speak to others when you feel uncomfortable? How do you kind of broach that? Want to hide that kind of negative energy, but also want to share. It.
Yeah, I think that that's a tough one, right? I mean, just like everything else, there's no one right way to respond in a situation. And I'll thank you all for allowing my daughter to join us. Um, uh, you know, Keeping those feelings to ourselves, I think it's learning what works for you. Maybe try one way to let it out. If that doesn't work, the next time you're frustrated or really bottling up those feelings, try another way.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that you'll see all over is journaling, and I think sometimes in writing out our feelings and what we have going on really helps us to understand exactly where does that stem from and be able to figure out how we express it the next time we have it.
Yeah. No, that's a really, really, really tough thing to handle. All right, very, very good. I think that may wrap up the Q&A. But thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, Lara. And I guess we can say we hope everyone has a great night, a great day if you're in a different time zone. Lara, any other parting words?
Just thank you again. Amazing questions, amazing participation, and have a great afternoon, evening, or wherever you are.
Last comment. She is so cute. Thank you
Oh,
for
thank
sharing.
you.
All right, beautiful.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. Yeah, have a great night. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.